All right, ready to dive into a tech battle royale. WordPress versus WP Engine. And this isn't just about ones and zeros. This gets into, like, the philosophy of the internet.
Yeah, it really gets at the heart of who controls the web, you know? And with WordPress powering something like 40% of all websites, it's a pretty big deal.
Huge. So for anyone who doesn't spend their days neck deep in code, let's break down the basics. We're talking about WordPress, this super popular platform for building websites. And the key here is it's open source.
Right. Anyone can use it, tweak it, even start a business around it. That's how you get companies like WP Engine. They offer these really specialized hosting services, making it way easier to use, especially if you're not, a tech wizard.
So it's like WordPress provides the tools, WP Engine makes those tools user-friendly, everyone wins. At least that's the way it's supposed to work, right?
In theory, sure, but then things get a little messy.
This is where the drama starts.
Pretty much. It all kicked off with a blog post.
Just your average, everyday blog post.
Oh, this wasn't just any blog post. This was Matt Mullenweg, the guy who created WordPress, CEO of Automattic. They're behind WordPress.com. And he comes out swinging, calls WP Engine a cancer on the WordPress ecosystem.
Whoa, fighting words. What exactly had WP Engine done to deserve that kind of label?
The big accusation was that WP Engine was disabling a feature in WordPress called revision history. They were doing it to save money, but, well...
But what's so important about revision history?
It lets users track all the changes made to their content, go back to older versions if they need to, basically have more control over their data.
So Mullenweg is saying WP Engine is messing with user control, possibly even impacting security.
That was the argument. And this whole issue of control kind of snowballed into another big point of contention: trademark.
Ah, yes, the infamous WP and WP Engine. I have to admit, I just figured that was like a nickname, shorthand for WordPress.
Well, Automattic owns the WordPress trademark, and they weren't too happy about WP Engine using WP because, well, they claimed it was misleading.
Misleading how?
Like, someone might see WP Engine and think, oh, they're officially connected to WordPress. Especially since, and this didn't help, WP Engine hadn't actually donated anything to the WordPress Foundation. So, Automattic is saying they're benefiting from the name without really giving back. Of course, WP Engine didn't just take this lying down. They fired back with their own legal letter claiming fair use, basically saying, hey, we're allowed to use WP, back off.
So now it's a full-blown legal standoff. Unfair business practices on one side, trademark infringement on the other, and this whole thing is playing out against the backdrop of the WordPress community. What happens next?
Well, Mullenweg, he decides to up the ante. Some might even say he goes nuclear. He bans WP Engine from some of the most important WordPress.org resources.
Okay, a full-on ban. This isn't just a war of words anymore, right? This is going to have real consequences.
Right, and it did. Basically, WP Engine customers, their websites, they couldn't easily update their plugins and themes.
And this is bad because, sorry, I'm still catching up on my WordPress lingo.
No worries. Plugins and themes, those are like the nuts and bolts of a WordPress site. Plugins add all the cool stuff like contact forms or SEO optimization, and themes, those control the look and feel.
Got it. So basically how your website functions and how it looks.
Exactly. And keeping those updated, it's not just about, getting the latest features. It's also a huge security thing. Outdated plugins and themes, they're like an open door for hackers.
So Mullenweg used his control over these updates, over these essential WordPress tools, to essentially pressure WP Engine.
That was WP Engine's argument, yeah. And you can imagine it didn't go over well. A lot of people felt like Mullenweg was throwing his weight around, going against the whole, spirit of open source.
Yeah, I bet. What was the reaction from the WordPress community?
Oh, they were not happy. Lots of criticism, people saying he was abusing his power, that this whole thing contradicted what open source is supposed to be about.
It does seem like a complicated situation. I mean, trademarks are important, but so is the idea of a free and open internet.
Absolutely, and that's what made this whole thing so messy. There were valid points on both sides. Some people actually did side with Mullenweg, saying he was right to protect the trademark and that WP Engine was, playing a little loose with the rules. But either way, something had to give.
Did anyone try to calm things down?
Well, there was a short-lived ceasefire. Because of all the backlash, WordPress.org temporarily lifted the ban, gave WP Engine a chance to, make some changes, address some of the concerns.
So what they do? Did they start donating to the WordPress Foundation, rebrand completely?
They did make some concessions. They changed some of the language on their website, tweaked a few of their plan names.
To be clear that they weren't directly affiliated with WordPress.
Exactly. Trying to avoid any confusion. Now, this didn't magically solve everything, of course, but it did show that, maybe they were willing to meet Automattic halfway.
So a small step towards peace in the WordPress world.
Maybe. But the whole thing left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. It got people thinking, what if this happens to me? What if I build my business on an open source platform and then, boom, the rug gets pulled out from under me?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It sets a bit of a scary precedent.
Right. And this is where you get people like John O'Nolan. He's the founder of Ghost CMS, which is another content management system, kind of like WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very vocal, saying, look, is this really what we want? One person, one company, having this much control over such a huge chunk of the internet?
That's a really important question, especially when we talk about the internet being this, open and collaborative space.
Exactly. And the WP Engine situation, it brought this tension to the surface, this tension between the ideals of open source and, the realities of running a business. Because at the end of the day, WP Engine, they're trying to make money too.
Right. So we have this clash of philosophies, legal battles brewing, and then, to top it all off, Mullenweg's private texts get leaked.
Yeah, things are about to get even juicier.
Leaked texts. Always a recipe for disaster. So what was the juicy gossip? What do these texts reveal?
Well, there was one message that really stood out. Apparently Mullenweg had actually thought about offering the CEO of WP Engine, like, a big job at WordPress.org.
Really? So they were going to bury the hatchet and become best buddies?
Well, it never happened, obviously. But yeah, just added more fuel to the fire. People started wondering about, hidden agendas, power struggles, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it definitely makes you go, what's really going on here? But beyond the drama, this whole thing had real consequences, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that people at Automattic, they weren't exactly thrilled with how Mullenweg was handling things.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of unrest, a lot of people disagreeing with his leadership, and it all came to a head with, well, a mass resignation.
How many people are we talking about?
159 employees. A lot of them from the core WordPress team, the ones who, really build and maintain the platform.
Wow, 159. That's a huge blow. It's one thing to have these public battles, but when you start losing people from your own team, that says a lot.
For sure. It showed that this wasn't just an external conflict. It was creating these internal divisions within Automattic, eroding trust in leadership.
So where does that leave WordPress now? Have they managed to recover from all of this?
Well, they're trying. They brought in a new leadership team, hoping to, turn things around, rebuild the trust that was lost.
Fresh start. So who are the new folks in charge? Any big names?
One of the key figures is Mary Hubbard. She's the executive director now, and get this, she comes from TikTok.
TikTok. Wow, that's quite a jump. From dance crazes to the world of open source software. What's her background?
Yeah, it's an interesting move, right? At TikTok, she was in charge of U.S. governance and experience.
Okay, so maybe not directly related to WordPress, but she clearly knows how to navigate complex online communities, right?
Exactly. And that's something WordPress desperately needs right now, right? Someone who can rebuild their image, regain the trust of the community. Plus, she's dealt with content moderation, policy issues, all that fun stuff.
So she's definitely got her work cut out for her. What about the lawsuit with WP Engine? Where does that stand?
Still ongoing, no resolution yet. And this is a big one. It could have major implications for how trademarks work in the open source world.
So bigger than just WordPress and WP Engine, this could set a precedent for the whole industry.
Absolutely. We're talking about the balance of power, right? Open source is all about sharing, collaboration, but then you have these companies, they're trying to build businesses, protect their interests. It's a tough one.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, any final thoughts for our listeners? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the big one is that open source, it's not always sunshine and roses. There are challenges, complexities that we're still trying to figure out.
And we can't forget the human element.
Right.
We're talking about real people, real companies with real passions and real conflicts.
Yeah. And this story, it's still being written. The decisions made by the courts, by WordPress, by developers, by users, it's all going to shape the future of the internet as we know it.
It's a reminder to all of us, I think, to pay attention, to ask questions, to be engaged. Because what happens in the tech world, it doesn't stay in the tech world, right? It impacts all of us.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, a huge thank you to our expert for taking us on this wild ride through the WordPress and WP Engine saga. This is a conversation that's far from over, but for now, thanks for listening and keep exploring.